With Dawn of War 4 upon us, one question comes to mind. Did you know that the Blood Ravens chapter has more named relics in their possession than any other two Space Marine chapters combined? In fact, the Blood Ravens have enough relics that they could outfit every single Marine in 3 whole companies with a unique relic each, and they'd still have leftovers. In fact, one of those companies could almost be completely comprised exclusively of Marines with relics acquired from other chapters and factions. You heard that right. The Blood Ravens have almost 100 relics stolen from other factions. The Dawn of War games insist that many of these relics were gifted or named in honor of or found in some allegedly innocent capacity. But no other chapter in 40k gets around that much. In fact, a number of these alleged gifts are from chapters that actually despise the Blood Ravens. So today, we're going to fully embrace the meme and take every relic that fits the joke to shine a light on the illicit reclusium of the Blood Ravens. We're going to break this list down into relics by faction, starting with the factions that the Blood Ravens have commandeered the most relics from, and ending with the ones who've only lost 1 or 2 relics to the Scions of Aurelia. Starting off with the Space Marine chapter that finds themselves the greatest victim of the Blood Ravens' kleptomania, the Space Wolves, of which the Blood Ravens possess 9 whole relics of. Just to apply this to greater context, there is more written lore for the stolen Space Wolves relics than most successor chapters in all of 40k. Axe of the Frost Rider. The Axe of the Frost Rider is a revered power axe once wielded by Otto Frostrider, a legendary warrior of the Space Wolves. He earned lasting renown when he used the weapon to slay the Chaos Champion Hasdrubal in single combat. After Frostrider's death, the axe was believed to have been interred with him in a frozen tomb beneath the ice fields of Assaheim. Yet, despite its supposed resting place, the weapon has mysteriously reappeared multiple times throughout the millennia, and always in moments of great need, cutting down the enemies of mankind. Most recently, it resurfaced once more, this time in the hands of the Blood Ravens, and naturally they have no idea how it got there. Fang of Fenris. The Fang of Fenris is a finely crafted power axe, now considered to be a sacred relic of the Blood Ravens chapter. Its creator, a master tech marine by the name of Isaac Jordanos, once attempted to visit the Space Wolves' homeworld of Fenris, seeking inspiration. While the Space Wolves refused him landing rights, true to their distrust of outsiders, Jordanos remained in orbit, where he was supposedly awed by the imposing sight of the Fang, the Wolves' towering fortress monastery. Upon his return, he allegedly forged the weapon in their honor, naming it after the stronghold that had impressed him so, creating a Fenrisian power axe without ever setting foot on Fenris. Jordanos might have reportedly never landed on the world, but I suspect he did, and I suspect he didn't leave empty-handed. Gift of Blackmane. The Gift of Blackmane is another power axe of Fenrisian design. According to the Blood Ravens, it was allegedly forged by the chapter's own artificers as tribute to the famed Wolf Lord Ragnar Blackmane. Supposedly, it was intended as a gift to the Space Wolf, an offering of respect, perhaps even kinship, or maybe even an apology for a certain tech marine snatch and grab. However, when word of this gift reached Ragnar himself, he reportedly burst into laughter and dismissed the gesture by saying, "Let them keep their trinkets." Wise of him. No sense in reclaiming a gift that might have been theirs to begin with. Matchless Savagery of Russ. The Matchless Savagery of Russ is yet another Fenrisian-style power axe, allegedly created in honor of the Primarch Leman Russ himself. The weapon lives up to its dramatic name, capable of slicing cleanly through both flesh and armor alike. The Blood Ravens deemed the title fitting, given its brutal efficiency. The Space Wolves, however, didn't take kindly to the gesture. One can only assume it's hard to accept a tribute when it looks suspiciously like it was lifted from your own vault. Prize of the Iron Wolf. The Prize of the Iron Wolf marks the 5th Fenrisian power axe now in the hands of the Blood Ravens. This particular weapon surfaced during the chapter's campaign on Kading Prime, where they had been deployed to purge an Exodite presence. For reasons left unexplained, Bjorkston, an Iron Priest of the Space Wolves, was present alongside the Blood Ravens during the operation. After a particularly fierce engagement, he reportedly remarked that the axe was a fine prize. No mention is made of him gifting it, so naturally one has to assume the Blood Ravens took that as permission. Cunning of the Night Wolf. The Cunning of the Nightwolf is an exquisitely crafted sniper rifle, rune-etched and finely tuned. According to the official story, it was gifted to the then Scout Sergeant Cyrus by Voland Thundertooth, a rune priest of the Space Wolves. The two had served together in the Deathwatch, and the weapon supposedly arrived with a cryptic message, stating, "I think you will be needing this, old friend. Rumours of Aurelia bubble, even on Fenris, and the runes cast your fate in misfavour." Touching, sure, but if you know the Deathwatch, or the Space Wolves, you know they guard their relics tighter than a dragon hoards gold. Odds are Voland didn't send the rifle. Cyrus just never gave it back. Gelid Truth. The Gelid Truth is a formidable stormbolter, etched with Fenrisian runes of courage and fury, that was once wielded by none other than Ulrich the Slayer during the First War of Armageddon. How it passed from Ulrich's hands is left a mystery, though according to the Blood Ravens, the Space Wolves were ordered not to reclaim it, with Ulrich allegedly saying, "It shall do its Gelid work among other chapters. The runes of Russ would have it so." How very convenient. Mercy of Russ. The Mercy of Russ is a unique suit of power armor notable for its constant chill. It also offers exceptional resistance to flame-based weaponry. Officially, the armor was allegedly crafted under the guidance of Iron Priest Bjorkston, supposedly in the aftermath of the Purge of Kading Pride, where he had accompanied the Space Wolves for reasons that are still left vague. Though one has to wonder if Bjorkston simply left that conflict not only missing his power axe, but his armor as well. I'm pretty sure the Blood Ravens just straight up stripped this guy down to his black carapace and bounced, and he's simply too humiliated to own up to it. The Wolf's Barding. The Wolf's Barding is, at face value, just a suit of power armor. According to chapter records, the name came after a supposed duel between two tech adepts of the Omnissiah, each claiming the right to christen the armor. The story goes that the name was chosen to honor the fiery Templars of the Space Wolves. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me, as tech adepts don't usually break out into brawls over random things, but Space Wolves do. I suspect two Space Wolves were probably fighting over this armor, which was yoinked by a Blood Raven when they weren't looking. Next up, we've got the Sons of Vulcan, the Salamanders chapter. Blasphemy of the Mechanicus. The Blasphemy of the Mechanicus is a plasma gun with a bad reputation. While in a Salamander's hands, it misfired and blew apart a land raider the chapter had been entrusted with, earning it the immediate condemnation of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They declared it tainted and demanded it be dismantled. However, Forgefather Vulcan Histan refused, keeping the weapon despite its infamy. How it later ended up with the Blood Ravens is anyone's guess, though if their reputation's anything to go by, they probably didn't exactly get it through official channels. Cleansing Gift of the Inferno. The Cleansing Gift of the Inferno is a heavy flamer built by the Salamander's own master artificers. It ended up with the Blood Ravens after Brother Tarkus visited Nocturne as part of his penance before becoming a sergeant. The Salamanders, impressed by his faith and dedication, made the weapon for him to wield when he felt he was ready. Another case of a Blood Raven dropping by a chapter's homeworld and walking off with a gun that they definitely had permission to take. Argentus' Fury. Argentus' Fury is a one-of-a-kind Astartes bolt gun, gifted to Blood Raven's Sergeant Argentus during the Second Armageddon War by the Salamanders' artificers. At least, that's how the story goes. The weapon had been specially modified to fire deadly dragonfire bolts, making it both rare and incredibly valuable. Which, of course, makes it sound a lot less like a gift, and a lot more like Argentus saw his chance and walked away with a Salamander's relic. Salamander's Tongue. The Salamander's Tongue is a melter gun blessed by a Forgefather of the Salamanders, and it's claimed more enemy armor than anyone could hope to count. At some point it ended up in the hands of the Blood Ravens, though there's no record of when, where, or how, which probably tells you everything you need to know. Vulcan Launcher. The Vulcan Launcher is a master-crafted grenade launcher that spits out custom incendiary rounds, turning everything it touches into a firestorm. The design tweaks are credited to one of the Salamander's own Forgefathers, making it a weapon of formidable power. And just like the Salamander's Tongue, there's no record of it ever being handed over to the Blood Ravens. So I think it's somewhat safe to assume they helped themselves. Vulcan's Wrath. Vulcan's Wrath is a plasma cannon named in honor of Nocturne, the volcanic homeworld of the Salamanders, where geysers of molten rock erupt skyward and the very air shimmers with heat. It's a fitting tribute to the world and the chapter it forged. And once again, there's no record of the Salamanders ever gifting it to the Blood Ravens, they just have it. Xavier's Torch. Xavier's torch is a deadly melter gun, blessed by the legendary chaplain Xavier of the Salamanders, and said to have carried its righteous fury into the heart of 1,000 alien strongholds. At some point, it was lost by the Salamanders, only to later turn up in the Bloodraven's arsenal during the Aurelia campaigns. I'm definitely noticing a pattern here. With the Space Wolves relics, there's usually some vague, questionable story attached, but for the Salamanders, there's no story at all. The Bloodravens just have them. Scales of the Salamander. The Scales of the Salamander is a suit of power armor forged to shrug off even the fiercest flames. Its name comes from the great lizard-like beasts of Nocturne, whose hides are said to be just as impervious. How it went from a Salamander's forge to the Bloodraven's reliquary, well, at this point you can probably guess. Corona Tempestus. The Corona Tempestus is an ancient variant of the Iron Halo created on Forge World Griffon 4, and passed between several chapters over the millennia. The Salamanders were its longest-standing custodians, until they allegedly handed it over to the Bloodravens following a ritual tournament before the Third Armageddon War. Which sounds nice and ceremonial, though with the Bloodravens involved, I wouldn't bet my bolter on it being a clean handover. Now we move on to the Sons of Caliban. Azrael II. Azrael II is a power sword of Night Black Metal, now in the hands of the Bloodravens chapter. It's said to be the sister sword to the Dark Angel's Grandmaster Azrael's own Sword of Secrets, and even rumoured to be one of the chapter's fabled Heavenfall blades. I'd be willing to bet that the Sons of Caliban are unaware of this weapon's location, for if they were, war may come to the Bloodravens. Blade of Pride. The Blade of Pride is a chainsword now tainted by chaos. It was once wielded by a Dark Angel during the defense of Hive Septimus against the Dark Eldar. When an explosion parted him from the weapon, he chose to hunt it down rather than regroup, giving the Xenos time to capture hundreds more for their slave pits. How the Bloodravens came into possession of the blade is left completely unexplained, but with the Dark Angels and Chaos Corruption in the mix, it's not hard to suspect the Fallen might have a hand in it. Probably for the best that the Dark Angels don't know where it is now. Fist of Belial. The Fist of Belial is a Terminator power fist the Bloodravens claim to have forged in honor of Belial, master of the Deathwing, holding the Dark Angel's first company up as the gold standard for any Bloodraven granted the right to wear Terminator armor. Supposedly, the relic was lost millennia before M41, during the first pacification of Spire Legis on Meridian, only to be miraculously recovered during the First Aurelian Crusade. So, they make a Dark Angel's relic, lose it for 1,000 years, and then just happen to find it again. Sounds about as believable as the explanations for the rest of their armory. Also, I'm pretty sure that with that length of time, it would make Belial older than Dante. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure this one's stolen. Final Absolution of Caliban. The Final Absolution of Caliban is a plasma gun with a reputation for unleashing blasts so hot they could split a planet's mantle. Its name references the shadowy, half-whispered tales of Caliban's destruction, a choice that the Dark Angels have never found amusing. In fact, they've been known to suggest that the Bloodravens should receive the same kind of absolution. If nothing else, it's nice to see the Dark Angels and Space Wolves finding common ground, mainly in wanting the Bloodravens to pay for their raiding of everyone's relics. Lance of the Angel. The Lance of the Angel is a master-crafted las cannon, once wielded by the Dark Angels during their crusade against the techno-recidivists of Phase 5. In that campaign, it racked an impressive kill count, 65 tanks, and a host of heretical combat drones reduced to scrap. When the war was won, the Dark Angels' tech marines blessed the weapon, and it still bears the markings of that crusade. How it ended up in the Bloodraven's hands? We don't know, but given the pattern, I doubt the Dark Angels just handed it over. The Lion's Roar. The Lion's Roar is a one-of-a-kind Astartes heavy bolter, named in honor of the Dark Angel's Primarch Lionel Johnson. Its punishing salvo is said to echo the Primarch's own fury at the betrayals of the Horus Heresy. And while it was clearly made for the Sons of Caliban, it's now sitting comfortably in the Bloodraven's arsenal. Naaman's Silence. Naaman's Silence is a master-crafted sniper rifle named for the veteran Dark Angel Scout Sergeant Naaman, who wielded it to deadly effect against the Orcs of Pesquina 4. Somehow, much like the Space Wolves relic sniper, the Dark Angels one ended up in the hands of the then Scout Sergeant Cyrus. Either Cyrus has a real talent for making friends, or for walking off with their guns. Favored of Baradiel. The Favored of Baradiel is a suit of power armor built with a number of custom touches preferred by the Dark Angel's master Baradiel himself. Exactly how the Bloodraven's artificers came to know those personal design choices is unclear. Of course, the simplest explanation is probably the right one. They just stole it. Right, it is time for the Blood Angel relics. Hand of Rage. The Hand of Rage is a Terminator power fist that originally belonged to the Blood Angels. According to their official records, it was forged for the 5th Company in honor of the righteous rage of the pure against the ruinous powers. Others, however, suggest the name is a nod to a darker truth, the sanguinary rage carried in the chapter's very gene seed. Unchecked Fury. The Unchecked Fury are a pair of relic lightning claws, once wielded by a Blood Angel completely consumed in his chapter's bloodlust. Even now, the weapon still hums with the same black rage that claimed their former owner. And, somehow, they've ended up with the Blood Ravens, because apparently nothing, not even cursed relics, is off limits to them. Inferno of Baal. The Inferno of Baal is a relic flamer first forged on the Blood Angels' homeworld. How it ended up in the Blood Ravens' armory is anyone's guess, and why they decided to tinker with it, mixing toxic chemicals into its Promethean fuel, is even less clear. Pistol of Baal. The Pistol of Baal is a unique Astartes Mark III bolt pistol, its grip stamped with the teardrop marks of the Blood Angels. According to Blood Raven records, it was acquired during a ceremonial exchange of arms with the Blood Angels in M37. But strangely enough, the Blood Angels have absolutely no record of this exchange ever happening. This is one of those relics you don't even need the meme for, it's just straight up stolen. Fury of Lamates. The Fury of Lamates is a suit of power armor named after the legendary Blood Angel's chaplain himself. It's said to channel the warrior's unyielding wrath, with the words, "Choose death, alien, lest you face Lamates," etched proudly along the gorget. The Diadem of Dante. The Diadem of Dante is a golden variant of the Iron Halo, crafted to honor Chapter Master Dante of the Blood Angels, a hero whose deeds have shaped the Imperium for centuries. Those who wear it are said to share in his might and fury, which makes it all the more curious that it's in the Blood Raven's possession, something I doubt Dante would be too pleased about. Now, we must go over the Praetorians of Terror, the Imperial Fists, and the first one is kinda silly. Rogal's Fist. Rogal's Fist is not a power fist, but instead a power mace said to have been created by the Primarch Rogal Dorn himself for his sons, the Imperial Fists. There's no explanation at all for why it's now in the Blood Raven's arsenal, but it's safe to bet the Imperial Fists don't know about it, because anything made by their Primarch would be a relic of near unmatched sanctity. And if they did know, I'd be willing to bet the Blood Ravens would have a siege breaking down their door. Lysander's Judgment. Lysander's Judgment is a thunderhammer supposedly named in honor of Darnath Lysander, the famed first captain of the Imperial Fists. Rather than take it as a compliment, Lysander's only recorded response was, "I remember them not from the rolls of the Index Astartes," which is kinda hilarious, really. He'd rather pretend the Blood Ravens don't exist than outright accuse them of stealing. Dawn's Retribution. The Dawn's Retribution is an enormous, two-handed thunderhammer. Its name a nod, at least in theory, to the Primarch Rogal Dorn. Its legend began in the 12th Black Crusade, when a Blood Raven strike cruiser suddenly peeled away from the Imperial battle line and went straight for a Black Legion vessel, destroyed it, and slipped back into formation. No one ever officially explained why they took such a wild risk, but if I had to guess, whatever was on that ship is now sitting in the Blood Raven's reliquary. Stalwart Companion. The Stalwart Companion is a one-of-a-kind Astartes relic bolt pistol, once the constant sidearm of Captain Galen of the Imperial Fists. Galen was known to boast that only death could part him from it, which makes its current place in the Blood Raven's collection suspicious, to say the least. Unending Torrent of Fury. The Unending Torrent of Fury is a dreadnought assault cannon, sanctified by the Imperial Fist's own tech marines and packing even more bite than the standard pattern. Over centuries of war, it's turned orcs and tyranids and every other flavour of Xenos into little more than a fine red mist. Of course, for the Imperial Fists to bless a relic like this, it would have had to be in their hands to begin with. So, somewhere out there, there's probably a very angry yellow dreadnought wondering where his gun went. Steel of Dawn. The Steel of Dawn is a suit of relic power armor, hailed at its creation as a masterpiece of protection and named for Rogal Dorn, which raises a fair question. Why would a completely unrelated chapter, barely even on the Imperial Fist's radar, name a suit of power armor after their Primarch? The most likely answer is that they didn't make it at all, they just acquired it. Moving on, we have the Sons of Rabute Gilliman. Gaze of Tigurius. The Gaze of Tigurius is a master-crafted lascannon, last recorded in the hands of the Ultramarines during Chaplain Varnus's mission to Lorne 5, to recover the Imperator Titan Dominatus. Its name likens to the fate of its targets, to that anyone foolish enough to draw the ire of Tigurius, the Ultramarines' chief librarian. Guilliman's Example. Guilliman's Example is a Crusade pattern relic bolter, painstakingly crafted on Ultramar to the same exacting standards used in the days when Rabute Guilliman first set quill to parchment for the Codex Astartes. Only a handful of these weapons are made in the modern era, and almost all are carried by Ultramarine veterans who regard the design as the pinnacle of the bolt gun's potential. They're the kind of relics that rarely leave Ultramarine hands, if they're ever brought out of the armory at all. So the fact that one has ended up in the Bloodraven's possession, well, either it was the world's most generous gift or they liberated it. Holy Bolter of the Ancient. The Holy Bolter of the Ancient is a revered Ultramarines relic, a bolt gun that has seen countless crusades at the side of the chapter's finest warriors. Much of its full history has been lost to time, but legend claims that Marnius Calgar himself once bore it during his early centuries as a tactical marine, which makes it all the more impressive and suspicious that it's now sitting in the Bloodraven's vaults instead of Ultramar's. Tellion's Chosen. Tellion's Chosen is a master-crafted relic sniper rifle named after the legendary Ultramarine Scout Sergeant Tellion. It's said to have been wielded by him to devastating effect on Icar 4 during the Second Tyrannic War. A fitting feat for one of the greatest Ultramarine heroes, and one of the deadliest Astartes marksmen in Imperial history. And as some of you have already guessed, it's now in the hands of the Bloodraven's own Cyrus. Some patterns really do repeat themselves, don't they? Barding of Ultramar. The Barding of Ultramar is a suit of Relic Artificer power armor straight out of the Tyrannic Wars. After Tarsis Ultra, High Fleet Leviathan kept spreading, and in one system a small Ultramarines force was making a desperate last stand. Then, out of nowhere, a Bloodraven strike cruiser dropped into orbit and started raining down drop pods. Caught between the two chapters, the Tyranids were wiped out, and the Ultramarines allegedly gifted the armor to the Bloodravens with all the blessings and litanies you'd expect, because obviously it wasn't snatched off a Tyrannic War veteran or anything. Ancient Purity Seal. The Ancient Purity Seal is exactly what it sounds like, a worn parchment and wax seal covered in litanies to the Emperor and holy terror. It's incredibly old, and while it now sits with the Bloodravens, it clearly bears the initials of a long-dead Ultramarines chaplain. Next up, we've got the Deathwatch. Now, the Deathwatch is really quite funny when it comes to relics, as if you know anything about the Deathwatch, you know that when it comes to Astartes chapters, none really match their capacity for esoteric relics. Sure, the Grey Knights and the Dark Angels have indeterminable amounts of old knight tech, but the Deathwatch? The Deathwatch have everything. Dark Age weapons, Xenotech, exclusive weapons and vehicles, and they guard all of it jealously. Xenosplitter. The Xenosplitter is a Deathwatch relic chainsword, blessed by the Ordo Xenos and carried into battle by countless alien-slaying space marines of the Deathwatch. The first Bloodraven to serve in the Deathwatch, a brother Tritheos, wielded it during the Tartarus campaign before falling against the Eldar. After his death, the Inquisition allegedly gifted the blade to the Bloodravens in his honor. Hate of the Xenos. The Hate of the Xenos is a relic plasma pistol first carried by Tritheos? I'm not sure how to say this guy's name. The very first Bloodraven to serve in the Deathwatch. Ever since, it's been passed down to every Bloodraven seconded to the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Xenos. Now, fine, I'll admit, you could argue this one's actually a proper Bloodraven's relic. But here's the thing. Surviving a Deathwatch tour is rare, like really rare. Never mind keeping the same pistol intact through multiple Marines undertaking that tour. That's not just lucky, that's actually really suspicious. I wouldn't be shocked for a moment if it was quietly liberated from a Watched Fortress armory just to avoid the embarrassment of losing the cursed hot potato plasma gun. Jupiter Thunder. The Jupiter Thunder is a legendary plasma gun with a storied career in the Deathwatch, cutting down alien threats across the galaxy. Its last recorded use was during the fall of the Andreas system to the Orcs, and after that, it mysteriously turned up in the Bloodraven's armory. I don't know if you can tell, I've got a sore throat whilst recording this, but I need to get this one out on time. 6 liters of water on hand to try and soothe my throat. Scourge of Xenos. The Scourge of Xenos is a special Astartes heavy bolter that the Blood Ravens proudly list as a relic of theirs. They claim it was carried by Sergeant Bryn, their second ever Marine to ever serve in the Deathwatch, and that by the time he came back, it had racked up blessings from 3 separate Inquisitors. Yeah, I'm gonna be real, the flavor text for this weapon is straight up Bloodraven propaganda. Watch captains don't receive blessings from multiple Inquisitors, let alone some random Bloodraven in the Deathwatch. Shadow Scale. The Shadow Scale is a rare suit of power armor, occasionally issued to Space Marines serving in the Deathwatch. Built from light-absorbing nanofibers and compressed ceramite, it's said to carry an almost supernatural shroud, letting even a towering Astartes melt into the shadows. It's basically Deathwatch stealth armor. And out of all the Deathwatch relics the Blood Ravens have acquired, this is definitely one the Long Vigil would come storming back for if they realized it had been pinched. Okay, we are now moving on to some of the wildest relics that the Blood Ravens possess. Custodes relics. For obvious reasons, the Custodes do not like their gear being in the hands of Space Marines. Hell, the Custodes just do not like Space Marines, period. And I want to say that these are the wildest relics the Blood Ravens have, but they aren't. But they're close, they're close. Relentless Will of the Emperor. The Relentless Will of the Emperor is an ancient, venerated bolter that the Blood Ravens claim once belonged to the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own elite guard on Terra. The source specifies his personal guards, so it's highly likely that this bolter was once property of the companion sect of the Custodes, the individual custodians who stand watch over the throne room. While the Custodes do use bolters, they're rarely standardish. Their weapons are typically far more ornate and powerful. From a lore perspective, ignoring how it looks in-game, it could well have been a Custodian Lastrum Stormbolter, or even a Sagittarium Boltcaster, which begs the question, how in the throne's name did the Blood Ravens get their hands on it? Because I assure you, no Custodian is handing their weapon over willingly to an Astartes. Righteous Inferno. The Righteous Inferno is a flamer in the Blood Raven's arsenal, said to have once been wielded by a member of the Custodes. Its purifying flames are said to burn with unmatched intensity, a lingering blessing from having served so close to the Emperor himself. Flamer weapons among the Custodes are exceedingly rare, but one does come to mind. The Infernus Fire Pikes of the Custodian Aquilon Terminators, massive flame projectors built to reduce entire hordes to ash in an instant. Golden Armor of the Custodes. The Golden Armor of the Custodes is one of the most revered artifacts in the Blood Raven's possession. A stunning suit of Auramite plate said to have been worn by a Custodian who stood guard over the Emperor himself during the final assault on Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, at the climax of the Horus Heresy. On the battlefield, its presence is said to inspire the faithful and grant them the strength to endure even the gravest of wounds. Which is absolutely wild, because lore-wise, there's basically no reason to believe a Space Marine could even fit into, let alone operate, Custodian plate. A full set of Auramite armor like this in a chapter's Reclusium would have to be one of the tightest kept secrets in the Imperium. If any Custodian shield host ever discovered its presence, the Blood Ravens wouldn't just be in trouble, they'd probably be annihilated. And that's without even touching the fact that this armor supposedly fought beside the Emperor during the siege of Terra itself. You know, I'll put it on the screen here. I did a video a few weeks ago covering every single Custodian relic, which, you know, I'll link down below. And I can say, with absolute certainty, that if this relic was in Custodes' possession, it would have been probably one of the most valued relics at the Custodes' disposal next to the Moment Shackle and the Apollonian Spear, just for being present during the siege on the Vengeful Spirit. The Blood Ravens are absolutely if the Custodes ever find out about this armor. Moving on, we have the Sisters of Battle, the Talons of Faith. The Talons of Faith is a lightning claw adorned with seals of the Ecclesiarchy and icons of the Adeptus Sororitas, a weapon meant to embody the Emperor's wrath. In battle, it strikes with all the fury and holy judgment against the enemies of mankind, and yet there's no record anywhere of it ever being given to the Blood Ravens. So it seems they've helped themselves to the Sisters' armory too. Fiery Scourge of the Witch Hunters. The Scourge of the Witch Hunters is a heavy bolter once carried by the Sisters of Battle in their endless crusade against heresy and witchcraft. Reforged to fit the frame of an Astartes, it now spits dragonfire rounds, laced with a sanctified Promethean mix, burning the enemies of the Imperium to ash in a moment's notice. However, there's no record of this weapon ever being gifted to the Blood Ravens, and no explanation of who exactly reworked it for Space Marine use. Then again, I think we can make a pretty solid guess. Guardian of Faith. The Guardian of Faith is a bolt gun the Blood Ravens call a relic, supposedly awarded to them after the defense of the Damocles cluster. The odd part is that it's a Godwin-Diaz pattern, the model of bolt gun made only for the Sisters of Battle. The weapon even carries Sororitas markings on it too. So unless the Sisters suddenly felt like handing over one of their signature weapons, chances are the Blood Ravens just claimed it for themselves. Lightbringer. Lightbringer is a flamer with a lot of stories attached to it. Some claim Saint Celestine herself used it before her ascension, burning humanity's enemies with holy fire. Most of the Sororitas don't actually believe that part, but no one denies it's a potent weapon. What isn't explained anywhere is how this supposed Sororitas relic ended up with the Blood Ravens. Now for the Black Templars. The Doom of Apostasy is a massive, two-handed thunderhammer of a Black Templar hero. Supposedly, High Marshal Signandus himself once wielded it during the Terran Crusade, even smashing through the chambers of Goj Vandir in the final push. Historians dispute this tale, but those who've borne the weapon since don't doubt its sheer power. What no record explains, however, is how it went from the Templars' hands into the Blood Ravens' vaults. Gauntlet of the Templar. The Gauntlet of the Templar is a Terminator power fist, tied to a less-than-friendly history between the two chapters. The Blood Ravens' reliance on librarians has always clashed with the Templars' hatred of psykers, and in M36 the tension boiled over. An actual Templar crusade traded fire with a Blood Raven strike cruiser commanded by a librarian. The Ravens later named this weapon after the Templars, supposedly as a jab at their rivals. Personally, I think the real explanation is simpler. That little exchange of fire was probably over the relic's theft. Armor of the Crusader. The Armor of the Crusader is a suit of power armor the Blood Ravens claimed was gifted to them after their part in the Vesper Crusade, allegedly by Castellan Draco of the Black Templars. It's said to carry a spark of his zeal. But considering the Templars already loathed the Ravens for their heavy use of psykers, the idea of handing over gifts sounds unlikely. The Iron Snakes. Axe of the Iron Snake. The Axe of the Iron Snake is a power axe once held by the Iron Snakes of Ithaca, revered for its role in slaying the great worms that prowl their deep oceans. A weapon of deep cultural meaning to the chapter, it's now somehow in the Blood Ravens collection. Vault of Deep Night. The Vault of Deep Night isn't a weapon at all, but the dreadnought chassis of Autolocus of the Iron Snakes, recovered after his death in battle. That's right, an entire dreadnought. Where most chapters might safeguard such a relic for eternity, the Blood Ravens ended up with it instead. Banner of Ithaca. The Banner of Ithaca was once the proud standard of the Iron Snakes, raised high to celebrate both their homeworld and the mighty worms they revere. It was lost to the Dark Eldar during a campaign, only later to turn up in the hands of the Blood Ravens, who unsurprisingly claimed it as their own. Not only have the Blood Ravens taken relics from the Custodes and Sisters of Battle, but also the Grey Knights as well. Bane of the Fallen. The Bane of the Fallen is a Stormbolter once carried by the Grey Knights, said to have passed into Blood Raven hands during the Dark Crusade on Cronus. The Demon Hunters appeared without warning, fought alongside the Ravens for a time, and then departed just as abruptly. Supposedly, they left this weapon as a token of alliance, though knowing the Grey Knights, this story feels a little too clean. Holy Armor of Purgation. The Holy Armor of Purgation is another story entirely. This modified suit of power armor had been worn by a Grey Knight for centuries until his death during the Necron assault on Lorn 5. The Blood Ravens promptly claimed it, and to this day, the armor retains its unique quirk. When the wearer is critically wounded, it unleashes a surge of psychic energy that blasts enemies back. If the Grey Knights ever learn that one of their sacred, warded suits now sits in Blood Raven hands, well, between this and their custodian souvenirs, the Blood Ravens are sitting on relics that could get them annihilated twice over, if the wrong people find out. So for the rest of the Imperial relics in the Blood Raven's possession, there'll be only one or two per faction, so I'll just dispense with the introductions and crack on with them. Fist of Crimson. The Fist of Crimson is a Terminator power fist the Blood Ravens keep among their relics, supposedly forged in honor of the Crimson Fists chapter. Over the centuries, its surface has darkened into a deeper and deeper red. The tech priests insist it's due to some quirk in the weapon's power field, while the more poetic among the Ravens claim it's simply been stained by the endless blood of their enemies. Either way, it's another tribute to a chapter that probably never asked for one. Cruelty of Geoffros. Geoffros? Ooh, Geoffros sounds bad. I'm gonna say Geoffros. Well, that sounds bad too. The Cruelty of Geoffros is a Stormbolter now held by the Blood Ravens, but was once with the Crimson Fists. It was carried by the Space Marine Geoffros during the invasion of Rindsworld, though at the time he wasn't there to defend his home. Geoffros was instead serving under an Inquisitor, and when he begged to be allowed to return to Rindsworld, his request was denied. Furious and broken, he was dispatched instead to Turin Primus to hunt a heretic in the Hive Qualitas Undercity. Something snapped. Geoffros turned his Stormbolter not on the heretic, but on the entire Underhive population, slaughtering thousands in his madness. His fate afterwards is unknown, but his weapon survived. By the Second Aurelia campaign, the Blood Ravens had claimed it, christening it the Cruelty of Geoffros. So a tainted Crimson Fist relic soaked in civilian blood. Exactly the kind of thing you'd expect to end up in the Blood Ravens' hands. Axe of the Ravens. The Axe of the Ravens is a power axe forged from night black alloy, supposedly gifted to the Blood Ravens by the Raven Guard, after the two chapters fought together in the Hogard Crusade. Wings of Shrike. The Wings of Shrike is a jump pack the Blood Ravens keep as a relic, and they say it was named after Captain Kavan Shrike of the Raven Guard. The funny part is, Shrike's been pretty openly critical of the Ravens ever since they butted head over tactics in the Holst Crusade. So yeah, when the Blood Ravens claimed they named this one after him, it doesn't exactly sound convincing. Judgment of the Khan. The Judgment of the Khan is a power axe once carried by Captain Brockus of the Blood Ravens 6th Company. In M39, after suffering brutal losses to the rising Orc War, Brockus shifted tactics to lightning-fast hit-and-run assaults, borrowing from the White Scars playbook. He made the axe his personal weapon and named it in honor of Jagatai Khan, the White Scars Primarch. Of course, the White Scars might not be too thrilled knowing the Ravens are out here handing out relics in their Primarch's name, if it actually was in his name and not stolen from the White Scars Reclusium in the first place. Flesh Tearer's Pride. Flesh Tearer's Pride is a chainsword the Blood Ravens claim to have named after the Flesh Tearers. During the Third War of Armageddon, they watched the Flesh Tearers pull off the near impossible, driving an Orc horde into retreat. Afterwards, the Ravens say they decorated this weapon with Flesh Tearer's heraldry to honor the feat. But given their track record, yeah. Daystar. The Daystar is a plasma cannon once wielded by a veteran devastator of the Angel Sanguine during their fateful clash with the Catan known as the Nightbringer. As the godlike horror closed in, the Marine is said to have fired a blast so bright it rivaled the midday sun on a desert world. What became of him afterwards is a mystery. He vanished from record completely. The weapon, however, didn't vanish. The Blood Ravens later recovered it, and it's been in their armory ever since. Artificer Bolter. The Artificer Bolter is a finely crafted bolt gun the Blood Ravens possess. The Blood Ravens version of the story is that it was gifted to them at the urging of Vashiro, chief prognosticator of the Silver Skulls. Trust the Silver Skulls to make a relic called something as blunt as the Artificer Bolter. Talon of the Doom Eagle. The Talon of the Doom Eagle is a plasma pistol carrying the heraldry of the Doom Eagle's chapter, supposedly recovered on Balassu Primaris, a world with no record of the Doom Eagles ever fighting there. Alongside it was found a power axe, dubbed the Eagle Talon, and the two have since been kept together as a paired single relic in the Blood Ravens armory. Strange how both a pistol and an axe just happen to turn up far from any Doom Eagle activity, though not so strange when the Blood Ravens are involved. Titan Smasher. The Titan Smasher is a missile launcher once carried by the Red Wolves chapter. Though it looks fairly ordinary, it earned its name by punching holes in everything from demon engines to siege tanks, and even the weak spots of god machines themselves. The weapon was lost for centuries before the Blood Ravens later found it. Armor of Brotherhood. The Armor of Brotherhood is a suit of Terminator plate with a long history. Over 1,000 years ago, Chapter Master Mariah of the Blood Ravens presented it as a gift to the Nova Marines, a gesture meant to strengthen ties between the two chapters. It was later thought lost during the Lithash Sector Crusade against the Tau, until it resurfaced in Blood Raven hands where it's once again been found in service. Considering the Nova Marines are one of only 2 named chapters with enough Terminator armor to outfit their entire first company, they probably won't come storming after this one. Still, it's hard to notice how quickly a gift given came back to the Blood Ravens. Myrmidon Plate. The Myrmidon plate is a dreadnought sarcophagus, forged with a long-lost process, said to have been developed by the Brazen Claws over 2 millennia ago. Drawing inspiration from the regenerative traits of the Tyranids, their tech marines created armor that could recover from even catastrophic damage, keeping the machine spirit and its occupant in the fight far longer than usual. And it's now in the hands of the Blood Ravens, making this the second dreadnought they've managed to walk off with. And to end off the Imperial chunk of this video, we've got some miscellaneous bits. Executioner of Heretics. The Executioner of Heretics is a bolt pistol carrying marks of the Inquisition. It was uncovered inside the Blood Ravens Fortress Monastery on Cyrene Secundus, lying beside the corpse of a murdered Inquisitor. Despite that rather ominous discovery, the weapon's effectiveness ensured it was kept as a relic of the chapter. The killer was never named in any official record, but let's be honest, the likely suspects probably weren't very far away. Mark of Exitus. The Mark of Exitus is a sniper rifle that somehow ended up in the Blood Raven's armory. Normally, only Vindicare assassins are trusted to carry Exitus rifles, but during the Walsh Uprising, a veteran Blood Raven scout sergeant fought alongside one of these killers. A year later, a rifle, modified but still unmistakably Exitus, turned up in his kit. Roar of Truth. The Roar of Truth is an assault shotgun based on Arbites models from Meridian, but modified to fire electrically charged shells that crack like thunder with every shot. It's a nasty weapon, loud, brutal, and devastating up close, which also means there's probably an Arbites Fortress precinct somewhere wondering where their shotgun went. Okay, now we're moving on to the part of the video where we can talk about why exactly so many elements of the Imperium hold the Blood Ravens in extremely low esteem. These relics, all of them, are hopelessly bound to the forces of chaos. Dreadmaul of Skarbrand. The Dreadmaul of Skarbrand is a colossal, two-handed thunderhammer, set to burn with the unending fury of the exiled bloodthirster himself. Skarbrand, once the greatest of Khorne's servants, was undone by his own rage. His wrath turned even upon his master. In his madness, he struck the Blood God, a crime for which Khorne cast him down and scarred him with eternal exile. That same endless, howling fury is what the hammer is said to echo, each swing carrying the weight of Skarbrand's fall and his ceaseless hatred. And naturally, it now sits in the Blood Ravens collection. Dominion of the Weak. Dominion of the Weak is a grenade launcher first carried by a traitor guardsman during the Tartarus campaign. When he was sacrificed in a ritual by the Alpha Legion sorcerer Sindri Mir, the weapon slipped into a pool of blood and, in the process, soaked up a fragment of the sorcery unleashed in there. After Sindri's defeat, the Blood Ravens recovered it and claimed it as their own. Sinister. The Sinister is an ancient, corrupted bolt pistol. It's been carried into every single Black Crusade of Abaddon the Despoiler, passing between traitors and loyalists more times than anyone can count. The Inquisition has long sought to see it destroyed, yet the weapon always manages to resurface. Its most recent appearance has been in the hands of the Blood Ravens during the Second Aurelia Crusade. Traitor's Sidearm. The Traitor's Sidearm is a melter pistol taken from the corpse of a Chaos Champion and, unsurprisingly, now rests in the Blood Raven's armory. It's a vicious weapon, especially when paired with a blade or an axe. And even after its purification rites, it's said to still carry the taint of its first owner. Aegis of Obliteration. The Aegis of Obliteration is a suit of corrupted Terminator armor, once worn by an Astral Claws renegade during the Badab War. When the traitor was struck down, the Blood Ravens claimed the suit, and Blood Raven Tech Marine Domitius took it upon himself to cleanse the armor for the chapter's use. A task in which he failed, and yet the relic still lingers in their vaults, tainted and dangerous. Exactly the kind of thing the Blood Ravens would keep around instead of destroying. The Testament of Malinus. The Testament of Malinus is a page torn straight out of a tome stolen from the Black Library, later fashioned into a battle standard by the Blood Ravens. The heretical script was blackened with a dye, but the corruption beneath still seeps through, whispering to whoever carries it. Okay, this isn't necessarily a Chaos relic, but I don't know where else to put it. If the Ordo Xenos or the Deathwatch found out the Blood Ravens were using Xenos tech in a banner, there would be hell to pay. Bedlam Staff of Sindri Mir. The Bedlam Staff of Sindri Mir is a corrupted force staff, saturated with 10,000 years of sorcerous power. It was the favoured weapon of Sindri Mir, sorcerer of the Alpha Legion, until the Blood Ravens cut him down during the Tartarus campaign. Rather than destroy the tainted artifact, they recovered it, and it still thrums with his lingering essence to this day. Any other chapter would have incinerated it without hesitation. The Blood Ravens just added it to their collection. Alpha Rifle. The Alpha Rifle is a corrupted sniper rifle once wielded by marksmen of the Alpha Legion during the brutal fighting on Tartarus. It claimed the lives of dozens of Blood Ravens before the campaign ended, and when it was finally taken, Chaplain Michaelis ordered it locked away deep in the chapter's vaults. And yet, by the time of the second Aurelia campaign, the rifle was back in use by the Blood Ravens. How it slipped out of confinement is anyone's guess, but it fits their habit of pulling cursed relics off the shelf when it suits them. Carapace of Pain and Armour of Infernus. The Carapace of Pain is a suit of power armor the Blood Ravens forged out of Alpha Legion plate, recovered on Tartarus. Even reforged, it still carries the traitor's corruption, feeding on the life of anyone reckless enough to strike its wearer in close combat. The Armour of Infernus has a similar origin, stripped away from the corpse of another Alpha Legionnaire during the same campaign. The Blood Ravens kept it for themselves, and it remains steeped in ruinous energy. When its bearer is wounded, Empyrean fire bursts from the armour, burning everything nearby. That's 2 corrupted Alpha Legion suits the Blood Ravens have not only kept, but use. Mephitic Perdition of Flies. The Mephitic Perdition of Flies was once the power fist of Solon Decius, a Death Guard Marine who, unlike most of his legion, preferred the fury of close combat. Decius remained loyal during the Horus Heresy, one of those aboard the Eisenstein during its desperate flight to Terra to warn the Emperor. But when Nurgle's rot took hold of him, he tried to halt the corruption by cutting off his own hand inside the gauntlet. A futile act as the Plague God's curse spread regardless. The weapon was thought lost, but centuries later it resurfaced during the second Aurelia campaign in the possession of the Blood Ravens. It still carries the taint of the Lord of Flies, which, of course, didn't stop the Ravens from keeping it. Plague Spitter. The Plague Spitter is a corrupted bolter once carried by the Death Guard Plague Marine Cachexis, who used it until his death at the Battle of Ulfman. Even after repeated attempts at cleansing by tech priests, the weapon still carries the stench of his corruption, its every shot reeking of Nurgle's foul blessing. It shares its name with the plague-spewing weapons mounted on the fetid bloat drones and plague-burst crawlers, though those are far deadlier versions. And finally, probably the most insane entry on this list. The one I know you've all been waiting for. Forgebreaker. The great thunder hammer that's passed through the hands of multiple Primarchs. Forgebreaker is no ordinary thunder hammer. It was forged by the Primarch Fulgrim for his beloved brother, Ferrus Manus. While Ferrus in turn created the sword, Fireblade, for Fulgrim. Each declared the other's weapon superior, and so they traded, cementing a bond of brotherhood deeper than any other between the Primarchs. That bond, however, would shatter with the heresy. When Fulgrim came to sway his brother, Ferrus refused, and in their duel, Fireblade was broken while Forgebreaker was stolen. On Istvan V, the brothers met again, Ferrus with the reforged Fireblade, Fulgrim with Forgebreaker. It ended with Ferrus dead by the blade of Laren, and Fulgrim damned for all time. Forgebreaker would pass into the hands of the arch-traitor and Warmaster Horus Lupercal himself. After Fulgrim's fall, the hammer eventually came into the hands of Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, who refashioned it to suit his own war gear and renamed it Forgebreaker Desecrated. Somehow, in the late 41st millennium, the weapon slipped from his grasp and turned up in the armory of the Blood Ravens chapter. By 999 M41, though, Perturabo had reclaimed it once more. How the Blood Ravens lost it, or how they ever got their hands on it in the first place, remains a mystery. Hopefully, a mystery that has a light shined on it in Dawn of War 4. And there you have it. The long, improbable, and often flat-out incriminating list of relics the Blood Ravens have managed to collect over the millennia. From custodian Auramite plate to Grey Knight armor, from Salamander forges to the halls of the Dark Angels, there seems to be no vault, reliquary, or battlefield they haven't helped themselves to. And with Dawn of War 4 just revealed, you can bet the Blood Ravens will saunter onto the battlefield with a fresh batch of newly discovered relics in no time at all. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Behind every paragraph and reference in these videos, there's a mountain of research, editing, and more than a few burnt-out cogitators. That's where our patrons come in, with multiple tiers offering a variety of things, from exclusive chats in our Discord to personalized artwork created for our individual patrons. Every subscription keeps the machine spirit of the Astartes Anonymous YouTube channel appeased. And for our top-tier patrons, a display on the Wall of Honor at the end of each podcast. So if you're enjoying the content, please do consider taking a quick look at our Patreon. Thanks so much for watching.